want to talk about reopening the schools and in general, teaching and teaching as a profession. I've been working full time as an academic, a professor at a university for 29 years. And all I ever heard was, how significant we were, how central we are to the well-being of the republic. We educate the children. It's not a question of paying educational taxes. It's a question of investments. We've all heard that. And how important education is. Important, important, important. That's a way to solve poverty. It's a way to move civilization forward with an educated voters, and all this stuff. How basically essential teaching is. Essential. I mean, that's what I've heard for 29 years. I've been told that what I do is essential. I mean, I know it's important. I didn't become a teacher because I thought it was important. I became a teacher because I like teaching. I like writing. I like doing all the other things an academic does. I did it primarily for me, but I know along the way I've helped people. I know students who I had, almost 30 years ago, and I can see them progressing through their life. So I do think teaching is really important. And in that sense, I would agree that it is essential. And what throws me is I turn on the TV now and I see all these stories about teachers who don't want to go back to the classroom because of the pandemic. It's too dangerous. Dangerous to them. It's dangerous to their students. And I'm thrown by this. I mean, on the one hand, I can understand why they don't want to run the risk and go back. But on the other hand, wait a minute. All I've heard my whole life is how essential they are. Now, a couple of months ago, at the height of this thing, maybe not in terms of caseload, but in terms of deaths, I mean, I'm talking about back in March and April when the mortality rate for COVID-19 was, in double digits, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, sometimes 16%. I can remember those days. And I can remember, putting on my mask, going to the local Publix to do some food shopping, with the hand sanitizer and all that. And I'd be walking around the store with the one-way aisle, so, which is a bunch of nonsense. But nevertheless, I try to play along with the whole thing. And there would be some young guy on his knees stocking the shelves, putting up bread, putting up toilet paper, putting up paper towels, putting up, you name it, stocking the freezer, doing all these other things. And why were they out there working? Because they're essential. The people at the food stores were essential. The people at the pharmacy where I would refill my prescriptions were essential. The doctors, the nurses who look after my health were essential. They ran risks. I mean, by some accounts, in some places, like 10% of the people who've come down with COVID were healthcare workers. I mean, this was dangerous stuff, especially back then when the chance of dying was in double digits. Like now in Florida, it's under 2%, it's 1.8%, which is lower than my chance when I was a kid of catching polio, which was 2.5%. That was the mortality rate of polio. So those kids were essential. They're probably being paid minimum wage or maybe a little bit above it. So that kid stocking the shelf is essential. He's the definition of an essential worker. The woman, the pharmacy tech at the pharmacy at Walgreens when I get my prescription, she's there because she's considered essential. As is a cashier who checks you out up front. Essential. The truck drivers bringing in the stuff to the food store or to Walgreens. Essential. The doctors, the nurses. Essential. So now we're faced with the question of should we reopen the schools in the fall, in August or September, depending where you live. Depends when they open. And I see teachers now who don't want to reopen. I saw a teacher last night from, it was more than a teacher, it was some sort of high-placed person, Fairfax County school system, saying that she doesn't want the schools open until they have either a vaccine or a cure. And I thought, it's been 40 years we're still waiting for that vaccine for HIV. I mean, we're gonna keep the schools shut down for 40 years? Or, a cure? What cure? Do we have a cure for the flu? we have a cure for the common cold? They're all viruses. The common cold is a coronavirus, obviously not as lethal as anywhere near as lethal as COVID-19, but it's still a coronavirus. Do we have a vaccine for it? Do we have a cure? I mean, what kind of moronic nonsense is this? But setting all that aside, looking at the numbers and where other places have opened schools in other countries and they're not having problems, the low risk to children of catching this and ending up dead, which are well below. I mean, if the population in Florida where I live, the chance of catching COVID and dying is 1.8% currently. And the chance of catching polio when I was a kid was 2.5%. Do the math. So the question then is, what's happening here? What's going on with these teachers? Now, I don't want to get into the politics of the whole thing. Let's set that aside. But I think the really important point to take away from this is that what the teachers are telling us, at least the leadership of the teachers, I wouldn't speak for every teacher in the United States or every professor in every college and university in the United States. But the people that we're hearing from, the people at my university that I'm hearing from, the Senate faculty leadership, and what I see on TV from these school districts who don't want to reopen is, the bottom line is they're saying is, we lied. We're not essential. I mean, you can't have it both ways. If the kid restocking the shelves at Publix or Harris Teeter or Kroger's or wherever you shop is essential and has to go to work at the height of this thing when the mortality rate was in double digits, and you don't want to have to go to work now when the mortality rate across the country is about under 4.5%. It's about a third of what it was back when these kids were restocking the shelves. What you're telling me is you're not essential. Education to this country is not essential. You can't have it both ways. If you want people to consider that you're essential, that you need more salary, higher salary, more resources, smaller class size, all the things that teachers always want, more time off. You're looking at universities, lower teaching loads, more travel money, more funding for this or that. If you want to convince the American people, the American taxpayers, and the legislatures who control your budgets that you're essential, how can you not do what the minimum wage worker restocking the shelves did a couple months ago when the risks were so much higher? That's what I don't get. If you're essential, get your ass in the classroom. If you don't want to get your ass in the classroom, I fully understand. But just don't tell me you're essential anymore, because you're not. If that kid has to restock the shelves and run the risks involved, and the pharmacy tech at Walgreens has to run the risks that she faced, and they're considered essential, but you're not willing to run comparable risks yourself at a time when the pandemic mortality rate is a third of what it was, how can you consider yourself essential? So by all means, don't go back into the classroom. That's fine. But I think, and I don't think I'm the only one who's going to remember this, because basically what you're telling us, we don't want to go back because, forget what we said in the past, we ain't essential. We ain't essential. Because that's the message that they're sending out there. Teaching as a profession is non-essential. You can't have it both ways. If the kid has to stock the shelves, pharmacy tech has to work the counter, the cashier has to check me out at Walgreens or at Publix, and they're essential, but you're not going to work, then you're not essential. Take your pick. Act like you're essential, or just admit for the future, for future reference, that you're not essential. That's the bottom line. Because what I'm seeing right now, at least from leadership of teachers, and again, I don't claim to speak for all the teachers, is what they are saying, once you strip away the politics, once you strip away all the jargon and crap about COVID-19, the bottom line, what they're saying is, we are not essential. That's the message here. That's the message to America. Teaching and teachers are not essential. You can't have it both ways. Anyway, if you appreciated this video, leave a comment. Please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification button so you'll know when I post a new video. And until the next time, I'm out of here.